Welcome to Clueless with Ogre and Big Paulie. Welcome to another episode of Clueless with Ogre and Big Paulie. How are you, Big Paulie?
Ogre, I am going well, my friend, going well on the beautiful Sunshine Coast, and dare I say, another night of barbecues, shorts and T-shirt, Ogre. Living the dream, as we say every episode.
You're not getting sick of it?
Could you ever? Could you ever? I mean,
That's the reason why you moved there.
I tell you, I have got a little issue with the barbecue at the moment, and it's something I cleaned it after I followed old mate Scotty Dell's rules, and I cleaned the barbecue. But I've got a bit of a problem. And it's apartment living, so I get out there in the barbecue, and the flames are leaping out of the barbecue, Ogre. And I thought, what is going on here? And I put the lid down and all that sort of stuff. Ogre, would you believe 7 minutes out of the 9 minutes steak cooking, the bloke next door, his smoke alarm went off. My barbecue next door has sent his smoke alarm off. I tell you what, I think it needs a clean, so I might have to get Mr. Barbecues himself onto this and see exactly where I went wrong.
It's good to see you making friends everywhere you go, but he did also recommend that you get rid of that Weber and upgrade to a newer one. He wasn't a fan of Webers.
Well, I'll tell you, the meat's good, the cooking's good. Perhaps my cleaning is not so good, and there might be a little bit of, I don't know, oil or fat or something down below. So I might have to pull it apart on the weekend between running, swimming, walking, stand-up paddleboarding. I might try and find a few moments, and of course the grand final coming up this weekend. So I'm not sure the barbecue will get done this week either.
And the wire brush. Have you bought the wire brush to clean the barbecue? Highly recommended.
I have got the wire brush, but I'm a little embarrassed to say it's still hanging on the side of the barbecue. You know, where they give you that little hook and you put your utensils there, it remains there unused. So perhaps maybe that's my problem.
Now, we touch on a previous episode where we're talking to the barbecue cleaner, Scotty Dell, but I have to tell you, Big Paulie, that our first episode with Aurelio, the Maltese Terror, not Terrier as you were calling him, has recently won a state title in the boxing field, in the boxing ring.
We picked this, Ogre. You were there in some of his early fights, and you said to me, off camera, off air, that this kid, he's got something. You actually thought he might be a bit Jeff Fennick-like, and well, lo and behold, here he is. State title.
State title, knockout
what was it
along the way.
Was it for the 4'6" midgets?
70 to 75 kilo, which was higher.
The big barrel's gone up.
After we did interview him, he did lose his next fight, so he's rebounded. And recently he's gone up to Queensland with his coach, who has been fighting in the first bare-knuckle competition. No gloves, Big Paulie.
Oh,
they were covered in blood. Covered.
That hurts just thinking about it, Ogre. Well, but I'm a little now you mention that I'm a little hurt that perhaps Aurelio didn't reach out to me, and I told you about my three fights, Ogre, undefeated. I thought he might have just reached out. And our other person we spoke about on that episode with Aurelio, remember Jaden Price, the young 12-year-old or something?
Yes.
Since all that, he is now taking on America. His next TikTok will come through at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'll update you later. But I think he's won some national title in America. So him and Aurelio, I think they're on the same path to greatness, Ogre.
We find them here first, Big Paulie. Find them here first on Clueless. Episode 7, milestone episode. I think we're in the top 27% of all podcasts ever created because they don't get to episode 7. But me and you are fighters.
We are persistent, Ogre. We're no bloody good, but we're persistent.
And we're here and we have a new guest with us tonight, Big Paulie. Our field regime, we just go far and wide, and what we have found here today is an osteopath. And I'd like to welcome Peter Parker to the Clueless podcast. G'day, Pete.
G'day, gentlemen. I am so proud to be part of this 7th episode. To know that you are inside the top 27% just makes me emotional right from the start. I'm that type of guy.
Well, they said we wouldn't make it. Well, they said we wouldn't make it, Peter, but we are here to prove them wrong. Top 27%. Well done, Ogre. All up to you, mate.
And we have, look, Peter Parker is here as an osteopath because I want to know what an osteopath does.
Peter Parker here, not as Spiderman, but as, of course, an osteopath. Wasn't that his name? Wasn't Spiderman called Peter Parker?
He was, and that is a nickname for you, Pete.
Yeah, it's certainly people never forget you. And, when I was born, which was 54 years ago, no one knew who Spider-Man was. And he was a little comic at the time. And my older brother was born and Mum thought, oh, you can't call him Peter Parker. Peter picked a pumpkin eater. And but then when I was born, she loved the name. And Penelope Plummer had just won Miss World. So she thought, well, if Penelope Plummer can be Miss World, we can have a Peter Parker. And then, of course, the Spider-Man, famous man who stands for good, not evil, has had a wonderful career, and I've been happy to ride off his coattails. It's been fun.
Now, Pete, I just want to ask a question, though, Pete, because your parents, correct me if I'm wrong, ran a news agency, which would have sold comics, and I researched this. Spider-Man was created in 1962. You're saying it didn't hit the news agency and then they knew and go, I've got my older son, but I've got Peter Parker. He's something special, and I'm going to call him after Spider-Man.
Well, I don't think Dad was looking at the comics. There are a lot of magazines in the shop, and I don't think Dad spent a lot of time around the comics. I'm surprised to hear that it's 1962. I was born in 71, so you've already taught me something tonight. Such is the depth of intelligence of this podcast.
Well, with respect to your dad, Peter, I reckon men of his era and his age probably weren't looking in the comics, but maybe the Sunday Truth, page 3 girls might have got a bit of a run in the news agency. But you said 1950, 54 years ago, Peter Parker didn't exist. I reckon 54 years ago, osteopathy didn't quite exist either. Would that be fair to say?
Well, that's actually, I hate to correct you, Big Paulie, but osteopathy is probably the oldest allied profession out of physiotherapy chiropractic. It began in 1874 in Kirksville, Missouri, with a allopathic or a GP doctor at the time. Andrew Taylor Still, and he watched his 3 children sadly die of meningitis at the time. And so Andrew Taylor Still believed that there are other fields of health where you could stimulate the self-healing mechanisms of the body. So he started to use his hands and he started to work on people's bodies. And so osteopathy is actually the oldest of those fields, but historically was never taught in Australia up until probably 35 to 40 years ago. So there were a very small contingent of overseas grads that came to Australia, and they're really our forefathers. But at the time that I studied osteopathy and my brother, we were renegades, really, because no one had a clue how to say the word, how to spell it, and certainly what we did.
Can we just clarify, how do you say it? Because I'm saying osteopathy. Yeah. Big Paul said something different.
Well, this osteopathy that Big Paulie's giving is just trash. That's rubbish.
Wouldn't be the first time I've mispronounced. So please, how do we say? I'm listening now.
I am a registered osteopath. I'm a registered osteopath.
Osteopath, I can say.
And I practice... Yeah, and I practice osteopathy. So,
all right, I'm going to try and remember that, but I'll probably stuff it up as well. But I have a connection to osteopathy, and Oga,
yes.
I haven't told you this before, but my grandmother's brother, I believe, was one of the first osteopaths, not back to the 1700s in America, but he was one of the leading osteopaths, and correct me if I'm wrong, Peter. McAllister, my grandmother's grandmother's brother. And my dad, I was telling him the story. We had you on, and I was talking about Lel.
Yeah.
And Dad played a bit of footy and played a few games at Essendon. And he said he used to go and see him every Friday or whatever it was before a game, just to click him into shape, and off he went. So osteopathy's been around and been an advantage to many people. So we have a connection, Peter.
Well, the name you've mentioned is highly revered within our profession, and he's exactly one of those forefathers that I was speaking about, and he had an amazing career. And people like that were healers. Like the community absolutely loved going to people like Lal. And one of my dear friends worked for him for a long time, but he had a very proud career. He was a wonderful medical person in our community. So that's great.
So, Pete, what was the inspiration for you as you're graduating in the late 80s that was a field you're going to follow? You said your brother is also an osteopath and he was a little bit older.
But before you answer that question, can we just back it up? Back it up a second, because we're talking about perhaps our episode is called Clueless, and I'm embroiled in the industry, Ogre, as is Peter. But a lot of people listening here probably don't know exactly what it is. We think osteopath, we might think chiropractor, physio, witch doctor, whatever. So before you tell us how you got into it, Peter, can you tell us exactly what it is?
So those three disciplines are all part of the same allied health field, I suppose. We all would like to think that we've got advanced study in musculoskeletal health. So we look after people, their whole body. It's a holistic approach, treating the whole body. So I looked into it a lot back then in terms of the differences between each profession, and osteopathy just rang true for me because I was a 14-year-old playing in the ruck. I was this tall at 14, so I was 6'2.5", and
plus the half.
I was playing for Bulleen Templestowe and went up in the ruck, came down on my back and hurt my back. So as you did at that time, I suppose you went to a GP. GP probably sent you straight to a surgeon. I ended up a surgeon at Warringal, and I'm standing there, took my shirt off, and he said, "Oh, well, he's got scoliosis. He needs rods in his back." It's plain and simple. So here we are with an acute lower back with no history of back trouble, being told I needed major surgery and rods in my back. So obviously we went down a more conservative path and started to see physios. And then I was really intrigued. From that moment on, I was really intrigued in the human body and the structure, and thought this is something where I might be able to contribute. If you go back further than that, I think as a newsagent's son, I thrived and grew up as part of the community, but I was behind the counter serving customers from as young as I could be. I was giving out the wrong change.
Were you putting the Tats Lotto on as well in the news agency?
Yeah, well, you had to do the grey lead then, Big Paulie. You had to grey lead the crosses, and it taught me how to communicate with people and talk to people, and I really thrive on being around others. And it was Eaglemont News Agency, a tiny little Eaglemont News Agency, and I was brought up by all those shopkeepers. I just wandered around getting free fruit, free papers, free milkshakes, sit with the plumber. It was a wonderful upbringing, but it taught me that I wanted to be around community, and that helped me to make a decision around helping others, because I think I'm actually at my happiest when I'm with people, and I thrive on that in contributing. So that was sort of a pathway into something I could use. That mindset and osteopathy rang true for me.
So what about, you're a 14-year-old, 6'2.5" ruckman leaping off the it must have been at that age. Jeez, if you weren't at that age at 6'2.5", you got a problem. But you're leaping off the ground. You let's just say you don't injure your back and you get your 83rd hit out, knock it onto the bloke, he kicks another goal, you win again. What happens if you don't hurt your back and you go on to a great football career? What was next, or what was instead of osteopathy if you didn't miss that tap out?
Well, being such a gifted athlete, I'm sure
we understand.
It would have been just around the corner, or so. It could have been professional in some sporting endeavour. There's absolutely no doubt. But, a knee injury at 19 curtailed that. Otherwise, as Ogre knows, I could have done anything. He's seen me at AFL nines. He's seen the way I can move and pivot, and it's a bit like a Robbie Flower. I could just turn on a throttling
glides across the turf.
And Yeah, so if I wasn't going to be an elite sportsman, I tell you, I would have taken on the news agency. I absolutely loved that. News agency had their peak, and then things started to change as digital, everything came in. So there's no, we think of a news agency now, they're really a great gift shop, but you don't need cards, you don't need papers, you can pay all your bills online. So I don't know. I wasn't a Rhodes Scholar in terms of academia. I don't think I would have ever got into medicine. I feel blessed that I really did find my path.
It is surprising, I think, as you say, that news agencies are still around. I think they're about on the same level as libraries. Now, I walked out the lift the other day and I said g'day to my next door neighbour, and I actually had to remind him. I said, "Listen, mate, was that me who set off your smoke alarm?" Anyway, he was okay about that. And I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" He says, "Well, I just went for a walk and I was going to pick up my wife from the library." And I said, who the bloody hell goes to the library? And apparently some people still do. So as there is still news agencies around. So, well, I think it's worked out for the better for humanity that you're no longer in news agencies and you're fixing people.
So again, Pete, just coming back to the difference with the osteo, you talked about the holistic approach to treat the musculoskeletal and nervous system complaints, hands-on approach. Physio, how is that different to the untrained mind? Why would I go to an osteo versus a physio? Is it just how I want to be treated, or is there some separation of skill?
Yeah, I think anecdotally, and this says I've worked with physios in the sporting realm in a very complementary manner. Physios are fantastic. Physios enjoy a far broader scope of work. They're in hospitals and public health settings, and in terms of their exercise prescription, rehabilitation, getting people back into life, I think physios are wonderful. I've got great friends who are chiros because we used to study our applied science at university, and obviously they're, again, I don't want to speak for them, but they're very focused on spine and joint structure and the nervous system. I would like to think the unique aspects of osteopathy is really that we take our time. We spend time with the patient. We individualise each patient. Delving into the history carefully and attentively can often lead to a diagnosis before you even examine. And in a medical system where GPs who are fantastic are time poor and musculoskeletal health is just part of the broad spectrum of their healthcare, I think osteopathy takes the time. So we take as long as we need to individualise that case. So we're always looking for the primary. We're always looking for the cause of the complaint, and always looking to educate the patient on their health and empowering them to really take control because they're their own success story. We can open the gate, we can turn the key, but they need to advance themselves. So spending time is probably our biggest facet, but we look for the cause, OGA, always looking for what's most primary in their complaint, which in a lot of ways differentiates us because we're not just listening to the noise or the symptoms. We really are interrogating that individual and trying to help them out.
Now, taking your time hasn't quite got anything to do with $165 a session, has it, Dr. Peter? I'm sure not. There's a holistic approach.
Where did you get those figures, Big Paulie? I mean, you've just thrown a number. Was that off our website?
And there's no Medicare rebate, I don't think, either. Now,
Incorrect, Big Paulie. Incorrect. No, Medicare GPs can give plans for osteopaths up to 5 visits a year where they get, part of their feedback. So there is some Medicare component for some patients.
I did read that one of the definitions or the differences between osteos and other physios and that is that osteos help you manage a certain condition as opposed to fixing it, where a chiro or a physio may be required to or try and fix whatever is wrong with you, but osteos manage the condition to give you the best mobility or whatever the best outcome is without actually fixing it. Is that fair or is that true?
No, I'd actually hope that osteos are absolutely trying to resolve or fix a problem. If someone walks in and they've got degenerative change or really bad sedentary habits or work lifestyles, you're not going to fix any of that. But for example, if they've got arthritis, you can help them to move as well as they can in that area, helping their pain, but also trying to halt the progress of that arthritis. So by treating the primary, your goal is to cure, it is to fix, but I'd hope osteopaths are really going after it and trying to cure problems, but it's strong language to use to say you're going to cure someone.
Have you ever felt a fella? Sorry, it intrigues me. Have you ever said, "Come in, mate. Come in, sit down," or he, she, whatever they? Have you ever considered? You looked at them, done your little diagnosis and whatever, and go, "They're cooked. I can't help this person." Have you? Surely that has crossed your mind at some time.
Yeah, I mean, this is where you got to know your limitations too, because if you don't help someone in a timely and a quick manner, you look to refer them onto a new direction, and that can often be surgical or other health specialists. So you can develop great networks. I mean, real good healthcare would be where you had the person in the middle and a field of experts around the patient to listen and say where this patient goes. So modesty, I would hope, is a big part of our profession and knowing our limitations. And if they're cooked, certainly finding them the right direction to go in. But even if I can't help them, I would hope I would advance their health in the right direction so they feel they've got hope or direction.
So have you got a particular patient that you can recall that they came to you with a myriad of problems, if that's the right word, and over a period of time or a period of treatments, you've got them from being quite serious and degenerate in their body perhaps to a level that they're back to close to 100%. I'm sure you'd have a lot of patients like that, a lot of stories like that, but is there one particular that stands out at all?
I think that is part of the real joy. Like, I get so excited when someone takes control of their own health. Because there's nothing worse as an osteopath than being a Band-Aid. So, and that definitely happens where people come in at their regular routine and I'll sit them if they've instigated any of the positive messaging that we've put forward and they just look at you blankly and they're more than ready to admit that they're there and just ready to for you to be the Band-Aid, which is not enjoyable for me, especially when you're trying to free up your diary to see fresh new patients. So, there's lots of success stories, people going from, couch potato to marathons, people who've come in an acute debilitating pain and resolving that pain and getting them back to life, seeing quality of life improvements. And that still gives such joy. And then diagnostically picking up on something like I did today, that gave me a real thrill because we've got to the root cause of a problem that was deemed quite serious. It could have been osteosarcoma in the femur, but it's ended up being a stress fracture. But the route that person went down to try and find an answer, I don't feel was getting that right till they came to me. And I'm not blowing my own trumpet. It's just the time taken and how inquisitive we are. And that, given the right measures, will heal. They'll be okay. So the more complex the cases, the better for me now. I've been in practice 30 years, and that's what I love. And the hardest patient to treat is someone who's never had hands-on, because they can't validate whether you're any good or not. They've got nothing to compare you with. And I love people that have been to everyone, because I say to them, I won't need to validate what I'm doing. You'll know in yourself. So that's what makes practice enjoyable for me. But you also get some horrific stories where you're the first primary care practitioner that picks up on something that can end up being really nasty. So practice is really emotional and fulfilling, good and bad. So I love it.
So Pete, osteo has taken you on the road. Firstly, once you graduated, my understanding, clarify for me, please, or for us, around you had to do a placement. You look for a placement. You're probably at a new era of osteo and that gaining some popularity. And did you end up on the Sunshine Coast for a period of time?
Wow, geez, what an experience that was. That's heaven up there. That is God's turf. Yes.
Correct, Peter.
I graduated as a class. Yeah, I graduated as a class of 16 osteopaths nationally. So the 250 osteopaths that were in Australia at that time were screaming for associates. So you really did have your pick. I didn't want to just open up in Melbourne because I knew that I'd just be in private practice ongoing. I wanted adventure. And I was put in touch with an absolutely amazing guy, Mark Keyworth, in Noosa. And Mark's still around and he still loves our profession, but he was the best of mentors for me. So I lived in Sunshine Beach. in Alandra Street, Big Paulie.
Well, I tell you what, have you been up there lately? Have you seen the new surf club up there? Oh, gee, does
Yes,
it
I
go
have.
okay?
I've had a
So
palmer there.
they reckon it's pretty good. I haven't been there myself, but it's on the list. Now, you didn't have to. You're just digressing for a moment. You didn't happen to invest a little in some real estate in Noosa when you're on your placement, did you? Because that would have been a good thing to do.
Yeah, you've raised a sore wound there. Was a bit silly. Rented for the 3 years and moved on, but yeah, that would have been a fair investment. It's just incredible country.
So how do you leave that? How do you leave there, Pete? You're in God's country.
For love.
Oh, you left it for love. Love it.
No, my girlfriend of the day was an osteopath, and she'd moved up, and we both wanted to travel internationally. Bearing in mind, Noosa was meant to be 1 year, but it was just too good. And the surf club, the triathlon club, the lifestyle was just extraordinary. But after 3 years, it was time to itch that international desire to go away, so off we went.
So are we talking about just wandering down Hastings Street on your lunch break sort of stuff, or what?
Oh, I mean, if you want me to set a scene, I mean, gee, I had hair down to the middle of my thoracic spine. I was not adverse to wandering around in my sluggos and little owls. 6'2.5".
Don't forget the half.
Yeah. So
Wow.
So I was part of the surf club. Rescued many old ladies out of half-foot swell there at Hastings Street. It was quite the scene, and Massimo's ice cream was just. The lemon sorbet was the staple. I hope you've had that before.
Well, was Miss Moneypenny's there? Was Zach's Pizza? Were they there? But it's changed a lot since those days.
No.
I could only imagine.
Yeah, it was a wonderful place. The day started in the water, it finished in the water, so you really didn't feel like you'd worked. It was awesome, and I was lucky enough to work in a practice in Gympie. If you've been to Gympie, Big Paul,
I know where it is, but I think you go only up there when. Yeah, it's an interesting place. It
is, and they are the best patients. Like they are the most wonderful people. It taught me about honesty. I used to treat a lady, Beryl Bushell.
I know Beryl.
I hope she's
I know
still
Beryl.
alive. You
no, I don't. I would think.
So Beryl had 13 kids.
She wanted about a bit of work on pelvic floor, perhaps. Peter, I'm not sure. But what I do know about Gympie, and I don't think we get to Gympie. I'm not sure if they've got electricity up there. But one thing about the Gympie people, I reckon, Ogre, is you'd be guaranteed payment straight from social services. But anyway.
Oh, wow.
Best custard tart I've ever had in Mary Street, Gympie. Best custard tart ever. They were beautiful. But Beryl Bushell used to bring me something every week. She'd bring me slice and cakes and biscuits. And it taught me honesty one day. She bought me these pickles, and they were the most disgusting things I'd ever had. And she came in the next week and she said, "Peter, how did you go with those pickles?" I said, "Oh, Beryl, they were great." She goes, "Great," because everyone else thought they were shocking. So every week I got pickles. That was the first lesson in honesty around healthcare.
If you're out there and listening, Beryl, a big hello to you, Beryl Bushell from Gympie.
She caught you out. So on your travels then, Pete, you've, late 90s, you've found yourself in Osteo with the Australian Rugby Union Wallabies team. How do you go from Noosa travelling to that spot?
Yeah, this turned into the most amazing adventure. I was so privileged. I was sitting at home ready to leave for Ireland to live there for a year. And my brother said, the Wallabies are going to be there at the end of the year for the 99 World Cup. I said, "Oh, yeah, okay." He said, "Why don't you give them a call?" And I said, "Oh, as if, Dave. What are you talking about? Why would I give them a call?" So I rang 013, got the operator. I asked for the Australian Rugby Union.
013, I remember that.
Rang the Australian Rugby Union. Talked to a receptionist. I said, "Who's the team manager of the Wallabies?" She said, "Oh, it's John Mackay." I said, "How would I get to talk to John?" She said, "Oh, you're very lucky. He's in the office." I said, "Oh, could I talk to John?" So she put me through to John Mackay. Now, John Mackay...
Did John know Beryl?
He'd be the... Oh, they were great friends, yes. So John Mackay, you'd love to have a beer with him. He's just a knockabout, wonderful Aussie. And he listened to me. We chatted for 5 minutes and he said, Pete, we get people like you calling all the time. He said, keep in touch. You just send me an email from Dublin and we'll let you know how we're going, because the first 6 weeks of the World Cup was in Dublin. So I did. Every 3 weeks I emailed him. I said, I don't need a response. I'm letting you know I'm here. I'll do anything. I'll pick up jock socks, massage, whatever I can to assist as a volunteer. Coming close to the World Cup, I was just thinking I'd love tickets to Lansdowne Road. I'd love tickets to see Australia versus Ireland at the World Cup. 3 weeks out, he emailed and he said, you will come out every afternoon at 2 o'clock. You will massage until stumps for the 3 weeks that we're in Portmarnock in Dublin. I couldn't believe it. So I'd practice in the morning osteopathically. I'd race out there and I worked my ass off. And I watched the Wallabies play, but I probably knew the names of 4 of the squad. So I was a breath of fresh air to them because I wasn't there idolising. I was there to work, and I was also a breath of fresh air for them just to have a chat to and talk about life. And right from the start, I realised that I was involved with a group of people that were extraordinary for so many reasons. At the end of that 3 weeks, John Eales and George Gregan went to management and said, everywhere we go, we get these volunteers in. I was then using osteopathic techniques with the blessings of the physios and John Best, the doctor, and they said, why would we not take Peter along for the rest of the World Cup? So all of a sudden I was part of the Inner Sanctum, the squad of 45, travelling throughout the rest of the World Cup. So I was a fly on the wall, as it was the whole 3 years I was with them. And it turned into an employed position, and that 99 World Cup turned into a World Cup victory.
Wow.
So, 9 weeks earlier I was not involved with the Wallabies. 9 weeks later I was out on Cardiff Arms Park meeting the Queen and sitting back in the change rooms savouring the moment. And it was amazing.
I'm thinking it's a story your brother doesn't let you forget, that it was all up to him, I reckon.
It was thanks to my bro.
How was it meeting the Queen?
Well, it was funny because I was the last one to meet her. She was totally disinterested. She was turning away as I met her. She had a glove on. It wasn't skin to skin. And I was typing an email back home jokingly to my mum, and I said, listen, yeah, I did get to meet the Queen. And it was really interesting when I met her because she actually leaned forward and she said, you're the team osteopath, aren't you? I said, yes, Your Majesty, I am. And she said, I've got a bit of a dicky knee. Would you mind having a look? And I said, listen, Your Majesty, we've just won the World Cup. I'm here with the boys. So I typed that home, and my mum went mad. How could you knock back the Queen? I said, Mum, I'm joking. She was totally disinterested by the time she met me.
So you didn't give her the g'day, Lizzie. You just a little handshake, and that was it.
Little handshake and she was off. But I got to meet Prince Harry, and again, being in part of that Inner Sanctum, you got to meet some incredible people.
How long ago was that, Peter?
Most surreal.
99 to 2001. I'll just run through some. So that's the 99 World Cup. He beat France 35-12. Also won the Bledisloe Cup. They also, during this time, they defeated the British and Irish Lions in 2001. Certainly, like as no Pete Parker as osteo, no Wallabies.
Well, you saw what happened when I finished.
They fell apart.
I know this is a public podcast, but it's clear and simple looking at the stats what occurred. But yes, it was
no Peter, no Wallabies.
It was an absolute golden era, and there's I believe there's some reasons for that. And they were an incredible bunch of guys.
I don't know anything about, and I'm clueless, totally clueless, Ogre, about rugby union, rugby league, all that stuff. And I'm trying to pretend I barrack for the Broncos or something up here because there's all these people wearing maroon shirts around the joint. But years and years ago, I was sitting in Cavill Avenue, the Gold Coast, minding my own business, doing nothing, just doing nothing. And this bloke walked past me. I have never seen a bigger man in my life. His thighs were bigger than my chest. He was about 6'6", and I turned around. Then there was about 6 blokes about the same size following him. I thought, who are these blokes? And I had no idea, of course, a bit like you, Peter. And then I googled this, and it was the World Cup in Australia or something, a World Champions. Again, I don't know if it was rugby league or rugby union, but I've been around a lot of footballers, AFL blokes, and all that sort of stuff. But I have never in my life seen men as big as this. And how you could possibly stop a bloke who's 6'6", 100 and something kilos, with thighs bigger than your whole body, has got me beat. So. Extraordinary athlete. So as an osteopath and you're massaging these men and you're doing it from 2 o'clock to stumps, do you get sore hands?
Yeah, I would now. There's no doubt now I'd really struggle, but at that time I'd only been in practice 4 or 5 years, so I was up for the challenge. But your day started early. You'd get up and do what you wanted to do before brekkie, have brekkie, and then you'd be training. So you'd be helping with training, because there was 15 of you as far as management. So you all had hands on deck, carrying gear and sorting out the fields. And some of the fun I had was that if there were odd numbers of player and they were doing plays and they were doing match simulation, but they were the odd numbers. I was the only one that didn't have a replaced hip or a dodgy knee. So they'd say, Pete, you just go out on the wing. Don't do anything, but just be there. Just be, and it wasn't live play, but they were practicing, their strategic plays. And one day, somehow, I got sucked into the middle of into the field, and there was a simulated tackle. So you just had to touch the player, and he dropped down to the ground as though it was a breakdown. And that's when your forward pack comes through and cleans out the contest. So John Eales and Nick Stiles, who was one of our forwards, they saw it was me. So as a piss take, they came through and they literally picked me up and they took me back and just dropped me on the ground 10 metres back. But I'll never forget looking up and seeing them come like they would in a match, and extraordinarily big men. And you see what they do in a contest, but their fitness is amazing, totally different to an AFL athlete. An AFL athlete is a greyhound, but rugby's a game where every body type can play the game. But their fitness to get from tackle to tackle is amazing. So, yeah, they're amazing athletes.
So they showed absolutely no respect for the 6'2.5" bullying Templestowe champion from yesteryear. Just picked you up and carried you out.
They did. They just treated me like a whippet. They just thought it was a great joke.
Did you know anything about the game at all? Prior to going. I mean, it's a funny sport for Victorians.
No, I didn't really. Yeah, and that again, initially you'd stand on the scrum machine to provide weight for them to practice their scrums, and to see those players link arms and bum sniff and go at the pads, and the way they hit the pads with that 750 kilo or more of combined weight, and see what their spines do and what their bodies do, that in itself was amazing. So to treat those bodies was full on. It was hard work, but I loved it. I was up for it. It was a great adventure.
And it was a long time ago. It was a long time ago, Pete, and you've obviously developed some relationships. Could you bump into those guys now and they say, Pete, how you going, mate? You go, John Eales, how you going, mate? Are you tight or is it forgotten? Or
Yeah, I caught up with John Eales not long ago at a Rugby Victoria lunch, and it was beautiful to see him. Like he is a beautiful man, and he defines what it is to be a good leader for me. And being in camp with him 24/7, like the way he was with his family, his mum and dad, and the way he was with his players and reading the room and reading the attributes of each person. So John Eales has always been an amazing man. Benny Darwin lives locally. He's a forward player that broke his neck. And that finished. He's okay. He's lucky, but that finished his rugby career. But he's a very intelligent man, and the medical staff, and so I am blessed. I do get to keep in touch.
So, Pete, you did 3 years in Noosa. A bit later on, you've done 3 years with the Wallabies. Why did you leave the Wallabies? Was it just run its course and the travel and so forth, or was it love again?
Oh, geez, that's controversial in itself. I had met Liza, my wife, 6 weeks earlier before the European tour, and we went on 2 very powerful dates. And 6 weeks later, that was the end of my Wallabies career. And some may say it was it was love. So certainly I was very lucky to have met Liza, but the actual truth lay in that there was a change in coach. And Rod McQueen had finished and Eddie Jones had come in. So Eddie went through, it was a review, a discussion, and Eddie's a very interesting man. So, that was the end of my time with the Wallabies, which I think was entirely appropriate because I couldn't have enjoyed any more success with them than what we had. It was time to knuckle down into private practice because when you're away 3 or 4 months a year, that's tough. And so I think it absolutely ran its course. But, Eddie Jones coming in was the end of my time with the Wallabies.
So you're back in private practice then, and so you're building up your practice. You have had 2, which you've just recently downsized to the 1. So a lot of patients come through your doors in that period of time. Is there anyone ever been, come with compromising outfits? You've turned your back and said strip down to X, and they've nuded up or they've turned into something else. Anything that comes to mind there, Pete?
Yeah, a couple. Yeah.
Do you mind sharing them?
Well, there's always, if I'm treating a male, and if the male would need to disrobe in some way, it's not uncommon that I wouldn't leave the room. I would stay in the room. If it was a female, then different scenario. And but with the male, it's okay. So I've got my head in a computer, finishing off my notes, and I wheel around,
pretending not to look,
to see a patient with a lace G-string on, back to front.
Hang on, I'm just trying to picture that now.
So the old Roy and HG battered sav and ranks above the beans, and however you want to picture or look at it. And that was done as a practical joke by a patient who was a friend, and it's something that can't be unseen, and it's still there, unfortunately.
He's only done it the once?
Oh, I never saw him again.
Not professionally, anyway.
So that was probably the biggest shock. Okay, that was probably the one.
Now, as Big Paulie and myself, getting on in age, Pete, what's things, and people our age or of any age really, what should we avoid doing to protect our musculoskeletal health?
Well, I think
what's 101 advice?
Well, you need to move well. Now, that's a very basic 2 words, but moving well throughout life is the best advice for anyone of any age bracket to avoid chronic health conditions, be they physical or mental. So I think, without being too serious, I think physical literacy is probably our biggest epidemic in society today. The fact that people are not moving well, especially from really young ages. The evidence and the research is suggesting that the impact on their chronic physical and mental health is enormous. So for you and I at our age, we need to move well, and we need to keep moving well. Move it or lose it is very, very true. So you need to have high physical literacy, which is really trying to nurture all your primal movements and the way we were made, and then picking the vehicles around which you would enjoy. But my passion is really around kids and the physical inactivity crisis. And I've done charity work. I've started a charity in that context, because treating a patient one-on-one is not a broad enough message. I just get frustrated that as a community we're not preaching this more. And it does come back to a lot of around digital devices and the use of those. But, the physical literacy means we are not physically, socially, cognitively, emotionally engaging in life. We are not putting ourselves around others. We're not having good eye contact, good communication skills. I a teenage person doesn't have the phone number of their friends. They have their handles, or they don't ring, they don't talk. It's seen as almost rude. So
their Snapchat, I think they have, or something like that. Oh, the Snapchat, I'll snap you.
That's it. So if you are moving well through life, you are more likely to put yourself in your community. You are more likely to put yourself around peers, and you will have a more fulfilling life. If you do not move well through health issues or psychological issues, you will be isolated. And with the broad context of what digital media does, which is, in asterisks, can connect us to the world, it actually totally isolates us. So that's my main concern. And so general piece of advice around moving well has huge implications on all aspects of your health.
And moving well, sorry, Big Boy, one last question here. Moving well, does that include some bedroom activity, Pete? Is that recommended in your advice to your patients?
Well,
please say yes, and I'll get my wife to listen to this episode.
Yeah, I mean, Olga, you've talked about Fast and Furious. It can be that way if you like. It's really and it's nice if someone else is in the room, Paul. So bedroom activity, heart rate, adrenaline, hormones. It's brilliant, fantastic for you.
Well, I think the answer to the question originally is move well, of course, but the problem, Olga, for people like you and I, we should have started moving well about 30 years ago. But to your point, Peter, and this is true, I was in the gym this morning, believe it or not. Thank you, I look well. And I was actually doing my own little stuff on the side, and I'm as stiff as a board and can't move anything. But funnily enough, the personal trainer was talking and with a couple of other older attendees who's looking after them, and he was actually talking about the same thing. And I was trying to listen as much as I could, but he was actually talking, and he started the story with a baby in the fetal position in the womb and what they do and how they move, and they're not constricted and all this sort of stuff. And again, I couldn't listen too much, but he was actually promoting exactly what you're saying, that we get lazy and we don't do this, and you've got to. And he actually said, I think he must have been a semi-professional wakeboarder or sports person, and he actually said he wished he had have learnt about movement and stretching and all that mobility, years ago. And his guy was a semi-pro athlete. So, to your point, hopefully the word is getting out, and some of the work you're doing and others is catching on.
Yeah, I think the context of your primal movements that you're born with, so push, pull, run, lunge, twist, throw, which should be natural. A flat foot squat. We should all be able to sit in a flat foot squat and be able to sit there comfortably. And if I got 10-year-olds in here, 8 of them would roll back and fall over. So you see kids in a primary school doing cross country, and they come across the line and they're crying. They're feeling their heart racing, which they may not have felt before. So it's genuine. The incidental play that we took for granted as children out in the street playing cricket or whatever we were doing, bike riding, unfortunately, for a multitude of reasons, is not as prevalent now. So the research says that this is the first generation that could lead a shorter life than the generation before, and that's the first time we've said that, and that the quality of their health, be it physical or mental, will be poorer. So if that doesn't raise concern and urgency around trying to curb that epidemic, I don't know what does. And the spike in mental health issues, I believe a lot of that could be helped through social engagement. Children that get to play sport in teams are so lucky. They are so lucky to be put around others and learn life lessons. And our aim should be around fostering that sort of community engagement and getting them to move.
Well, I was one of those kids, and that's great words of advice, but I was one of those kids who used to cry when I just finished the cross country. I wasn't crying because I was exhausted. I was crying because I finished 27th. But I'm over it now.
Well, you get a ribbon for that these days too, Big Paulie. It's not.
Well, I would have a drawer full of ribbons, Olga.
The competitive nature has sort of gone as well. And our previous guest had said that the kids don't want to try anything if they don't know they can succeed. So that's even applying for a job or whatever it might be. So, but yeah, sound advice there, Pete. One last question for me, Pete, and we hear it everywhere at the moment, and my question is around AI. AI is going to take over the world and this and that. We don't know where it's going to go and end up, but with that engagement that you have and one-to-one sort of treatments, does AI have a role to play in osteo? And is it based on just supporting what you do, or is there actually any treatment you can get from it as well?
Yeah, good question. I mean, yes, AI does play a role in the admin and running side and marketing and even reception, but I would say absolutely not in terms of therapeutic intervention or treatment. I mean, it can empower you with knowledge easily. You can facilitate information, but in terms of Bill Gates has stated that allied health is one area that, AI won't impact, whether it's, and its nature of its hands-on, it's trade and like trades. So anything that requires human physical activity involvement, I think is a sound employment choice for the future. But in terms of practice management software, in terms of our marketing, in terms of AI reception, we're even playing with now, AI definitely has a place. But I think I feel really content that AI won't impact on what I do with my patients in the moment in terms of that one-on-one care. And I think, when we look at scams and we look at everything that's occurring in terms of trusted materials, I think there's going to be a swing where the only trusted true form of communication is going to come back to eye-to-eye contact one day, because you're struggling to trust much else. So AI has its place. I know the kids are all over it. I'm playing with it, but it doesn't affect my day-to-day job.
Well, I certainly hope it does not in injury management, prevention, all that stuff that you and people of your industry do. But speaking of the gym, so I joined the gym. I mean, you would have think I've been going for years. Have a look at me. But so I go to the gym and I say okay, and I get a complimentary PT session with the PT guy. He's not happy about it because he's not getting paid, but the gym said you got to do it, so off we go. And literally, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Yep, told him, and he says, right, okay, and he says. He typed word for word what I want to do into AI, and I'm an AI, no idea. And he goes, and I thought he was brushing me off. Hang on, we'll do this. And within 40 seconds, it had a whole program of exercise. So I want to train for 45 minutes, do this, just work on the beach muscles, the biceps, and that's really about it, to be honest. But 45 minutes later, absolutely unbelievable program. And I thought, he's not happy. He doesn't want to be this bloke. But then he explained, he goes, why would I try and give you a program that, that I can design for you and show you when AI has an IQ of, he said, 1100. And he said, why would I try? And that's 1100 IQ, getting everybody's opinion on what exercises and how to do them and all that sort of stuff. And it was unbelievable. 40 seconds it took to do the program. And then I said, well, what's this bird dog thing, And he said, well, hang on a sec, click, click, click. And up he brings the video of how to do bird dog. So I'm down the gym now. I've got my AI notes and I've got my videos on what to do on the exercises. And he's not interested, old mate PT, but he did say his job is to, if you've got a specific task in mind or you want to do something and, blah, blah, blah. But for old Joe me, here's your AI, here's your videos and piss off.
Can you use bird dog in the bedroom?
I haven't sought management approval just yet, Peter, but it's due for discussion on the next agenda.
Well, I'm sure there's a synergy with some of that program there. I'm sure you could use it.
I hope so.
Pete, and I've already said one more question, but one more question. You said you came out from your studies, 250 osteos in the country. What growth have we seen since you graduated a number of years ago?
Yeah, there'd be over 3,000 registered osteopaths now, which is great. Melbourne is still the absolute epicentre with 2 university courses here. There's a program in Lismore and there's one opening in Perth shortly. So there will. I used to be really involved with Osteopathy Australia. I'm not abreast of the figures, but I would say there's 200 to 300 osteopaths coming out nationally every year at the moment. And the scope of work is really broadening for osteopaths as well. We're starting to go into different sectors, be they corporate or aged healthcare, NDIS, certainly the sporting realm. I'd like to think I was really at the forefront of that, but we've got advanced recognition osteopaths in the sports fields with AFL teams. So the scope of work for osteopaths is broadening, and that's exciting.
So in relation to training and education and degree, what does that look like? Is that a 4-year course? Is it a 5-year course, or what's involved in that?
Yeah, traditionally it's been 4.5 to 5 years. You're really working around what unis require now. Like there'll come a time where I'm sure there's a postgrad master's in osteopathy that could be condensed to a 2-year period, but there'll have been science components in their undergrad. But traditionally it's been 5 years, and I was blessed with the education I had at RMIT. It was a fantastic course. It was full on, but it was wonderful. And we're actually having our 30-year reunion Saturday week, and 11 of those 16 are coming. They're coming in and flying in from around the country, and they literally were like family, Big Paulie. They, day one, you're working on each other, you're getting to know each other and totally relying on each other. We were so diverse, but we became so close, and I love them. I just love them. So I can't wait to see them.
So when you say fly in, you mean each and every one of them on their private jet?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. We just land at Essendon or Moorabbin, and in we come. One girl's in the Guernsey Islands. She's soft. She said it's a bit far to come, so I'm a bit disappointed in her. But no, we're all coming in. It's going to be a great time.
Where the bloody hell is the Guernsey Islands?
Oh, no, it's a tax haven.
Well,
where you could park your Sunshine Coast money. You could put it there.
Oh, golly, I think I'd rather the osteopathy money than the Sunshine Coast money, but that's a discussion perhaps for another day.
Well, thank you so much, Pete, for joining us. Spidey, Osteo to the professional world champion Australian Wallaby team. You've taken us through a journey of how you started, even back to the news agency days and that whole social interaction that saw you choose Osteo as your choice. It's been a great insight, and I'm interested to get Paulie's feedback on that new move in the bedroom for myself to potentially give a try out as well on my PT regime. But thanks so much, Pete, for joining us. Really enjoyed it. Big Paulie, close.
Yes, thank you, Peter. I'm not sure I can still say it correctly, osteopath and osteopathy, but I certainly know a lot more about it, and I'm less clueless after speaking to you. So thank you, Peter, for joining us.
Thank you. I loved it, and congratulations on what you're doing here, guys. It's wonderful. I wish you all every success. Keep moving forward with it.
Well, how about that, Big Paulie? Peter Parker, Spidey, news agency, Osteo, Noosa internship, Wallabies Osteo, from volunteer to paid employee for 3 years, travelling the world, running his own practice. What's some great insights for ourselves around all that physical literacy stuff as well.
And all the Wallaby stuff, which is, life-changing and great experiences, travelling the world with an international team, all from the 013 direct dial. Find that number and off you go. How you call it luck, but you know what? If you don't make the call, you never know. So how good is it if you don't do it? Your whole life could change. You don't go to Noosa, your life changes. It's just extraordinary. Chance events shape your life. But I tell you what, I am feeling so much better, Olga, for the whole experience. I can't wait to get the headphones off here and start doing a bit of stretching and limbering up and, just starting to feel good about myself. And I think, I wish I had have started stretching 30 years ago, Olga, because I'm not much good at it now, but I'm trying.
And you've been reinvigorated by rejoining the gym?
I've joined the gym, and some mornings are a little harder than others. But it's a nice little spot down there, and it's 5 o'clock rise for me, 5 o'clock rise for 5 a.m. And the birds are chirping. It gets light here about
4:30.
Not quite 4:30 yet, but gee whiz. Yeah, I, on Saturday, Sunday it was, walk 8Ks, swim's a bit generous, a dip in the ocean, and home by about 7:30 and breakfast and coffee. Mate, the day's but a pup. You've got the whole day ahead. So if I just now can add a bit of physical movement and maybe a bit of osteopathy, Mate, life's good. Life's good, okay.
Do you need a nap at 10:30 a.m. on that Saturday morning, though, after being up already?
Yeah, it is an early start. But as we know, it is the best part of the day. So I'm not so sure if it's the best part of the day in Melbourne, but it certainly is on the sunny coast.
And what we take out of tonight's episode, Big Paulie, is move well.
Move well and move often, Ogre. And we just should have started this podcast with Peter 30 years ago, and then we'd both be feeling much better, I reckon.
Still a chance. There's still a chance. Thanks again, Big Paulie, for joining us on Clueless. I think we've got osteo all covered now. And for our listeners, and let them join us again in our coming episodes to learn more about more stuff.
You can't be any more clueless than us on osteopathy in particular, Ogre, but I am far better for the run, and I can't wait to see my osteo soon.
Good night.
Good night, Ogre.
Good night, Big Paulie. You've been listening to another episode of Clueless with Ogre and Big Paulie. Follow, like, subscribe, even leave a review. Do it all. We'd love to hear from you.